Hey guys, welcome to my Blender tutorial series, and in this tutorial we'll be going over how to grab an object, rotate it, and scale it. I use those specific terms because grab especially, I use that term because you want to be able to remember that specific term in your head, because to be able to grab an object in Blender, first of all you have to select it, that's just that. But then you tap G, and then when you move your cursor around you're moving your object, and that depends on which point of view you're moving it on. But you can also translate these objects on a specific axis. Like if you want to grab this and move it along the y-axis, remember the y-axis is always the green line, the x-axis is always the red line, and you don't see the z-axis, but I believe that's usually a blue line. Yeah, a blue line. So here you can see that too. See, x-axis red line, y-axis green line. So you'd want to tap G. If you tap Z, which is the z-axis, you can go up and down on the z-axis. If you do right click, you cancel your movements instead of doing click and then control Z. And if you tap G and go along the y-axis, you can go along the y-axis, and G along the x-axis, you can go on the x-axis. But let's say you want to go on both the x-axis and the y-axis. Like you want to move it over here by being like over here, but being more precise. So what you could do, if you want to go on two axes, that means there's only one axis you don't want to go on. And in this case, if you want to go on the x and y axis, that would be the z axis. So you would tap G and you would do Shift Z, and you're basically traveling along this plane. You can do that. So let's say you want to go along the x-axis and the z-axis. You want to cancel the y-axis. You can also do G and then Shift Y, and then you'll be going along this plane, and that would be very precise. See, that doesn't matter on the perspective. It is precise. Please try to remember that very specific term, grab, so you won't forget that it's G instead of move for M or T for translate. Translate is what it is in general, but grab is a better term to keep in mind because you're tapping G. And to rotate your objects, you have to tap R. That's why we're using the word rotate. But as you can see, it rotates based on your perspective. So this would be rotating along the z-axis right here, this would be along the y-axis, and this would be along the x-axis. Again, I recommend you guys to experiment with it yourselves and try to figure out how to just mess with these things. And obviously the last thing is, out of the three, there's rotate, there's grab, and there's scale. Scaling, I chose that word of course because you tap S to scale. Once you tap S to scale, you scale evenly along all sides. That depends on your origin point, of course. If I set my origin point to right here, then you'll be scaling outward from the origin point, as you can see. Usually, you can go to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to Center of Mass Volume, which would keep the origin point to the calculated center of the object. And that would scale evenly on all edges. You can also do the scaling on a certain axis, like scale on the y-axis, scale on the x-axis, and scale on the z-axis. With this, actually, we can learn how to model a very simple table, for example. So we can make this top flat by holding scale and on the z-axis. Keep the mouse far away when you hit scale, and then you slowly bring it towards the middle. And that's obviously really thin. And now what you're going to do is you're going to hit Shift and A, and this is the add menu. Shift A. You can add other meshes, for example this monkey, but right now we want more legs, right? And so we're going to add more cubes, and then we're going to scale it down until a reasonable size and scale it along the z-axis to make it more like a table leg. And now that I think about it, the top of this table is way too thin. It looks almost like a plane itself, which is just a flat line. So we want to add it, and so we want to add a little bit more thickness to the top of the table. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and do this actually. And so now the table is reasonably thick. And now you'll bring your leg down by tapping G and Z. Again, you could do this kind of table, which is kind of like the coffee tables, which is just one in the middle and this is stuck in the ground. Or you could do a normal four-legged table. And to do that, of course, you'd want to duplicate this one object, right? You don't want to recreate the whole thing again 3 more times. You have to hold Shift and D, and the object is duplicated. So you roughly place it where you want to. Of course, you're going to line it so you can see better. And so Shift D, And last one you don't need to duplicate because it's in the middle, so you just tap G, and now you move it, and this is very generally a table. That's really it for today's tutorial, guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.